This story is based on real stories. If you like this type of story, follow this page because every day we publish new and exciting stories like the ones you will see now. The white dress, the brightly lit ballroom, the smiles framed by floral arrangements. Helena believed that this would be the happiest day of her life. Every detail had been carefully thought out, from the handwritten vows to the perfume chosen in advance to mark everyone's memory. She wasn't just a bride, she was a woman in love, devoted, ready to build a future with the man who claimed to love her. Everyone looked at her as if she were a princess, but inside, she already felt a slight discomfort, a premonition muffled by hope. Until then, nothing made sense other than joy. But destiny, that cruel master, had other plans. Minutes before entering the church, Helena's cell phone vibrated insistently. It was an anonymous message. "He's not who you think he is. Open the video and see for yourself." Her heart raced, her hands trembled. Against her instinct, she clicked. And there, on the small screen of her cell phone, the world collapsed. Her fiancé, in a hotel bed, with another woman. Laughter, kisses, intimacy. The video was recent, very recent, recorded that very morning, on their wedding day. The world was spinning and Helena didn't know if she could breathe anymore. The hall, the flowers, the guests, everything seemed like a big lie. How could he? How could he have dared? Her heart was pounding, but she remained firm, paralyzed, her eyes fixed on the screen. Her perfect makeup was already starting to smudge, but no one noticed. Everyone was busy with the final adjustments, believing that soon she would triumphantly enter the nave of the church. But Helena wouldn't enter as a victim. Not that day. It was at that moment that something inside her changed. An inner crack turned into silent fury. She wasn't going to cry, not here. She wasn't going to scream or run. She wasn't going to cower in the bathroom or escape through a back door. She was going to smile. She was going to walk in with her head held high, as if nothing had happened, and then he would pay. For every lie, every touch that wasn't hers, every wasted "I love you." Helena wouldn't be remembered as the abandoned woman. She would be remembered as the woman who destroyed the traitor with elegance. When the doors opened, everyone stood up, moved by the beauty of the bride. Helena entered with firm steps, as if she carried the world on her shoulders, but without letting the chaos that consumed her inside show. Her gaze swept the hall and landed on Arthur, standing at the altar with a nervous smile. If he had known what was coming, he would never have returned to that church. But he didn't, and that was the first step towards revenge. She walked up to the altar as if she were in love, as if she still wanted to marry him. She stood before the priest, holding the flowers as if she were holding a gun. Silence fell when the priest asked her if she would accept this man as her husband. And then she smiled, a smile that was not of love, but of war. She looked into Arthur's eyes and said, "Before you answer, Father, I think everyone here deserves to see something." She lifted her cell phone, opened the video and connected it to the screen. And in a few seconds, the farce was unmasked in front of everyone. The hall fell into a deathly silence, as if time had frozen. Everyone's eyes turned to the screen where the forbidden images exposed Arthur's betrayal. Laughter and groans burned in everyone's ears, like acid on silk. Some guests covered their mouths in horror. Others murmured among themselves, unsure whether it was real or staged. Arthur's mother fainted in the front row. His father stood up, trying to turn off the screen, but Helena stopped him with a simple gesture of her hand. She was in charge of the show now. Arthur turned pale. He tried to explain himself, mumbling incoherent words, but there was no way out. The video spoke for itself. "Helena, I can explain," he said, desperate. But she didn't answer. She just handed the bouquet to one of the bridesmaids and calmly walked down the steps to the altar. Her footsteps echoed like a sentence. "There will be no wedding today, ladies and gentlemen, but there will be justice." And without shedding a tear, she walked out the front door amidst the flashes and whispers, leaving behind a ruined man and an altar stained with shame. Taupras wasted no time in turning the scandal into a headline. "Bride exposes betrayal at the altar." The video leaked, went viral, and Helena became a symbol of courage for thousands of women. But what no one saw were the following days: the silent tears, the wedding dress thrown on the floor, the wedding ring still attached to her finger like a scar. Helena disappeared for weeks, hiding in a cottage that belonged to her grandmother, isolated from the world and from social networks. She had to rebuild herself, piece by piece. It was in that silence that she was reborn. She began running every morning. Then she went back to painting, something she had given up because of Arthur. She read books, wrote letters she would never send. And one day, looking at herself in the mirror, she realized she was no longer the same. The woman staring back at her reflection now had harder eyes, a firmer posture, and a calm that seemed to hide a storm. Helena had buried her betrayed fiancé and was born as a new version of herself, stronger, colder, and with a plan. Arthur, in turn, tried to make contact. He cried in videos, asked for forgiveness in interviews, blamed human weakness and pre-wedding pressure. But the public was unmoved, and the world that had previously revered him as a promising businessman now treated him like a cheap scoundrel. Sponsors broke contracts, partners walked away, his name became synonymous with scandal. And it was precisely at this moment of fragility that Helena reappeared, not to get back together, but to deliver the final blow. She showed up at a charity event for the tourism industry, where Arthur was still trying to maintain some relevance. All eyes turned to her as if she had seen a ghost. Dressed in scarlet red, with an enigmatic smile, Helena greeted her allies one by one. "I'm investing in new projects, starting with this foundation that supports betrayed and abandoned women." Arthur couldn't even breathe. This was his downfall, and her consecration. The hunt began there. The news of Helena's presence at the event took over the networks. She was featured on the cover of magazines, invited to television programs, and began to be seen as a symbol of empowerment. While Arthur sank into debt and distrust, Helena rose like a phoenix. But she knew success was only superficial. True revenge required strategy, and to do so, she needed to reach what Arthur was still trying to protect, his company. Disguised as philanthropy, Helena began investing in competing companies, quietly buying shares and luring away his old partners. She used her new public image as both a shield and a weapon. Arthur only realized it when it was too late. One of the most important companies in his holding company had been acquired by a new majority shareholder. Her name? Helena Duarte. She didn't just want to destroy him emotionally. She wanted to see him lose everything he had built, every brick, every penny, every drop of power. Arthur tried to resist. Emergency meetings, promises to investors, agreements with banks. But the market already saw him as unstable, and no one bets on a wounded horse. His tarnished image made any possibility of recovery impossible. Little by little, his fortune melted away, and his former friends disappeared like smoke. He began to live in seclusion, in a modest apartment, far from the luxury he once flaunted. Meanwhile, Helena watched from afar. Not with pleasure, but with the conviction of someone serving a sentence. Her pain had been public, It was only fair that his downfall should be too. But there was still one final piece missing. A move that would end the game with the same theatricality with which it all began. And she knew exactly where and when it would happen. On the anniversary of his company's founding, where he would give a speech trying to regain his dignity. It would be there, in front of the few remaining loyal followers, that she would bury the past once and for all. The night of the event arrived. Arthur, dejected and aged, took the stage with a trembling voice. He tried to sound strong, thanked those who stayed, promised to rebuild everything from scratch. But as soon as he finished speaking, the silence was broken by the sound of heels echoing through the hall. Helena appeared among the guests, dressed in black, as if she were in mourning, not for him, but for the woman who once believed in empty promises. She stepped onto the stage without asking permission. "Congratulations on your attempt, Arthur, but I've come to make sure no one else is fooled by this theater." And then, with documents in hand, she revealed to everyone that she had acquired the company's last profitable assets, sealing its imminent bankruptcy. The hall erupted in murmurs. Arthur broke down in front of everyone. It was the end of his era, and the beginning of something much greater for Helena: justice, redemption, and freedom. After the event, Helena left the hall as if she were closing a show. There was no applause, but there was respect. She didn't smile or celebrate. She just walked in silence, like a warrior who had won the last battle of a war she never asked to fight. In her apartment, away from the crowd and the cameras, she finally allowed herself to take a deep breath. There was no relief. There was exhaustion. What to do now that her revenge was complete? She sat in front of the mirror, took off her earrings, let down her hair, and stared at her reflection. For the first time in a long time, she saw someone whole there. Not a broken woman, not a victim searching for answers, but someone who had survived, who had faced her pain head-on, who had transformed her suffering into strength. Helena realized that her greatest victory was not destroying Arthur. It was not allowing him to destroy her. Now, free from her past, she could choose what to build and for whom. Weeks later, now in a different rhythm of life, Helena was invited to a lecture on overcoming obstacles and female entrepreneurship. She accepted the invitation, but she never imagined that there she would meet someone from her distant past. Miguel, an old college friend with whom she almost had a relationship before meeting Arthur. He was different, more mature, more reserved. But the sparkle in his eyes was the same. They talked for hours after the event, laughing about their memories and sharing scars. Miguel already knew about the scandal, but he didn't bring it up with pity. He spoke with admiration. He said she had become an inspiration to his sister, to his co-workers, and even to him. Helena felt something she hadn't expected: lightness. For the first time in years, she didn't need to defend herself. She didn't need to prove anything. It could only be. Miguel invited her for coffee. She hesitated, but in the end, she accepted. Because some stories deserve a new beginning, even if it's slow. Helena and Miguel started seeing each other frequently. Everything was very simple, unhurried, and without pressure. And perhaps that was exactly what enchanted her. But even with this new peace, she still carried remnants of the storm. She was afraid to trust, to give herself up. She was afraid of being betrayed again. And Miguel, realizing this, didn't force it. He just stayed. One night, Helena invited him to visit the studio where she had resumed her paintings. She showed him an unfinished canvas, where the sky was divided between sun and storm. "That's how I feel," she said. Miguel didn't respond with words. He just held her hand, and in that touch, Helena understood. She didn't need to decide between the past and the future at that moment. She just needed to allow herself to live. Revenge had already fulfilled its role. Now it was time to choose freedom and perhaps love. Not for the other, but for herself. Months passed. Helena was no longer the woman who had been betrayed at the altar, nor was she the one seeking revenge. She was a different woman. Whole, strong, serene. The scandal of her marriage no longer made headlines, but her image remained alive in people's memories, now as a symbol of courage. She received messages every day from women who thanked her for her actions. Some said they finally had the strength to leave abusive relationships. Others simply said, "Thank you for not giving up." At the opening of her art exhibition, titled Renassa, Helena walked between the paintings in a vibrant red dress, without rings, without ties. Miguel was there, discreet, watching from a distance. They embraced each other tenderly, without promises, just presence. And that was enough. Before closing the event, she went on stage, took the microphone and said, "I was cheated on my wedding day, yes. But that wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the woman I have become. Don't let pain define you. Let it transform you. Like it did me." Applause echoed through the hall. At that moment, Helena realized that her story was not about betrayal. It was about rebirth. And there, in front of everyone, she took the final step, leaving the past where it belonged. Because true revenge was being happy.